buddy, Mike Vaccaro, and we're going to talk about two things he's done in the during the holiday season, but one in particular, a nice little commentary about today's Jet game and the fact that it was a win. That the fact that, you know what, we finally got, I'm a fan of, I'm more of a Giant fan, but I'm a fan of both teams, like a lot of people are. Giant fans and Jet fans don't hate each other, okay? They'll watch both games if they're not running concurrently, which is another beef I have with the NFL. You know, whatever happened to having one game at 1 and one game at 4, so you'd watch both. Now you got to choose, which sucks. But
actually, you're in New York now. You just don't watch either.
Going back to what we were saying over the past few weeks is that nobody's paying attention to what they're doing anyway because we're watching the games that matter. In particular, by the way, you know, we do have to talk about the game going on now, and you know that Kansas City. Kansas City and Pittsburgh. You know, I'll remember it's Washington, Dallas, and Washington, Dallas. Let's see, we can get the score here because for some reason, NFL.com. They need to hire me. They're driving me crazy. There we go. Cowboys leading the Washington football team 49-7, and when I left to come here, it was over then.
I want to actually update that. Just scored right now. Cooper Rush pass to the tight end. 55 be 56 to 7.
That's got to be the most one-sided game in the NFL this year, at least close to it.
Definitely this week, yeah. This Cowboys team, I think they're on pace to hit 60-64. They got 14 minutes left to get another touchdown or two.
It's crazy. And, you know, what more can you say? 55-7 is the score just updated on NFL.com. And, you know, Dak Prescott, 142.7 passer rating in the first half. This is just the first half.
Right. 27
for 35, 321 yards, and 4 TD passes. Just the first half. Now you got to open up and see what the rest of the stats look like. But that's just...
No, Dak had a great game. 28 of 39, 329 yards. Finished the game with 4 touchdowns. Cooper Rush getting that 5th touchdown pass for Dallas.
Why risk injury at that point?
Exactly. They were at 478 yards. 388 of that being passing. You know, this team has demolished Washington from start to finish, which actually is a bit of a shock to me in the sense that, you know, Washington had a good defense, especially towards the start of the season. But I know between COVID and just injuries really plaguing that team, you know, they had a long hill to climb just to begin with. And this Cowboys offense is really starting to find their groove after not really having that offensive spark we saw earlier this season over the past couple weeks. But they're great everywhere, you know, offense, defense, just focusing on offense again. They have 27 first downs and are 9 of 13 on third down efficiency.
Cooper Rush threw 2 passes for a combined 70 yards. And of course, one of those passes scored a touchdown. So Washington, on the other hand, Taylor Heineke, 7 for 22, 121 yards. I mean, you could have, put one of those throwing machines out there and would have done better.
I mean, he's doing good for a guy who missed the past couple weeks, I believe, due to the virus. But yeah, no one happy on the Washington sideline. There was already one fight that went down between a couple of the linemen, or back at the second quarter.
But, you know, the worst thing about it is, if you're watching this game, or if you're a Washington fan, there's 14-16 left.
Yep.
You have the full fourth quarter left to play.
Yep.
That can't be right. I mean, I figure the game at this point, because we're coming up on 11 o'clock here.
On WSB
Stony Brook, thank you very much. I figured the game would be further along, but you know what? These high-scoring games do tend to take longer because the clock stops more.
It is funny, too, because I was watching earlier for 2 games, one that Houston upset over LA, where they scored 41 points with David Mills under the center. You know, that was incredible on its own. But also that Cincinnati game where they were able to win by a score of, let me find it here, 41-21 over Baltimore, and Joe Burrow had 525 passing yards. I kind of thought, we got our fill of offense today. We'll get a defensive slugfest. And, for Dallas, their defense has stepped up. But for the Washington, there's no defense there.
Okay, so what we have here, the Cowboys are listed as already having clinched the division title, and they clinched a playoff spot last week. So they'll improve to 11-4 and 4 wins in a row. The Eagles, of course, played the Giants today. And, yeah, we got to mention it because that game matters for them, because they improved to 8-7 with the win, and the Giants, continuing to play out the string, lost 4 in a row. And what more you want to say about them other than
they suck?
Other than just end the season. But the Washington football team, this is going to be a big setback for them. Third straight loss, and they're pretty much buried. Although even with 6-8, 6-9 will definitely do them in, I think. But. Because 6-9 will guarantee a losing record. That's also true. Packers, they have already clinched the division title, but the other team that clinched today was, as I mentioned, the Kansas City Chiefs. That was a good one. Again, if you're a Chiefs fan, if you're a Steelers fan like our own Kurt Hilton, he ain't happy. But 6 straight division titles for these Kansas City Chiefs. The longest string of success the franchise has ever had. 11-4 now, and 8 wins in a row, and they were written off for dead before that streak started. Because where were they? They were 3-4, and their chances of making the playoffs. If you placed a bet at that point on them making the playoffs or winning the division, you cleaned up.
At the time, that division was so tight, and they were struggling to a point that we haven't seen with Patrick Mahomes leading the offense. That there was definitely a lot of questions, going down with a mostly healthy Chiefs team too at the time. Of all right, does this team still got it, or are they? Is it starting to really wind down? And I think it was too much to think they wouldn't make playoffs. There was definitely a question there for the first time over the past few years. That are they still top contenders? Even if they make playoffs, are they going to be one and done? No, they proved everyone wrong, as you said, going on a great stretch of victories. And right now, I think to me, they probably got to be the hottest team in the NFL. There's no team I think that's really benefited, more over the past few weeks than Kansas City. They've really found that momentum, really carried it. And, for end to end, they mopped the floor with Pittsburgh today. It wasn't really close at the end of the first quarter. And, Kansas City, another big win for them as they go on to, I think they already clinched a playoff spot, the first one. So they're going to be the top seed in the playoff.
But 6 straight division titles for them. And again, after week 7, you did not think that they were capable of it. But now the West, a couple of weeks ago, the West was super tight. Now, of course, the Chiefs kept on winning. And the Chargers dropped 2 in a row, so they're now 8-7. And the Raiders are tied with them because they won 2 in a row. And the Broncos, even though they're 7-8, are still in the hunt.
Look, we got to talk about the Chargers, man. Okay, I know last week we saw probably the biggest upset of the year, right, with Detroit beating Arizona. But going in, the Texans were 3-11 with David Mills and Rex Burkhead as the Texans' 2 best players. How do you let them total 189 yards rushing, 149 coming from Rex Burkhead, 2 touchdowns, and David Mills to throw 255 yards and 2 touchdowns on you? Are you kidding me? Oh,
this late in the season?
This is a team, mind you, that they average 77 yards per game on the ground, which somehow is even worse than what the Giants are able to do with the ghost of Saquon Barkley in the backfield, with a Booker who they don't even use as much anymore in the backfield, and the Jets who have a rotating cast of running backs on any given moment. Somehow the Texans have a worse rushing stats than those 2 teams, and they put 189 yards on the Chargers. Unbelievable.
The Chargers, they're pulling a fold like they back in the Dan Fouts days. Dan Fouts, of course, was a great quarterback, made the Hall of Fame, but the Chargers never got to a Super Bowl, not with him anyway, and certainly didn't win one, and much more was expected of that team, but they would pull these late season folds, and would drive San Diego fans crazy, and now they're driving everybody crazy in Southern California. But this was a team that was knocking on the Chiefs' door only a couple of weeks ago, and they've fallen back.
Literally, Meltdown perfectly encapsulates this team. It's not just defense that was let down. That offense, Justin Herbert as well, played just as bad. 3 turnovers, a pick 6 thrown by Justin Herbert. He did not have a great performance. I was trying to find his numbers. I think he only had 7 completions. Let me get the correct stat here. It wasn't good, I tell you that. 27 completions, but still 2 interceptions, only 1 passing touchdown. And really, the score, I think, gives benefit more towards the Chargers because it was 41-29, but they really didn't score up until the last quarter. Entering the fourth quarter, it was still a bit of a close game, but Texans got 24 points in that fourth quarter to the Chargers 14. It was ridiculous to watch, and the Chargers really, to me, if you go back to when the Chiefs were down, the Chargers to me looked like the favorites at the time. Now, I don't even know if they got a chance to make the playoffs.
The Raiders have an identical record by winning 2 in a row, and the Chargers faltered. And now you're wondering, which one's going to go?
Right.
If they don't,
both of them on the bubble as of right now.
Yeah,
looking out.
Now another team that's pulled a fold and has been overtaken. If you use certain tiebreakers like point differential or something like that, or head to head. And no, conference record Patriots. I'm talking about division. Division Bills are up on the Patriots, but the Bills have actually overtaken the Patriots in the AFC East. Something unthinkable 2 weeks ago. But the Patriots dropped 2 in a row, and the Bills win 2 in a row, and they have identical 9-6 records. But like I said, the Bills on the tiebreakers are right now, if the season ended today, are ahead.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a miracle in and of itself because the Patriots are starting to look more and more human.
Yeah, the Patriots have looked flat over the past couple weeks, Matt. The offense just wasn't consistent throughout. The defense, they played fine at the start, but, they were on there, just too much. And you let Buffalo control the possession game, and that's just going to kill you, especially defensively. And, I remember 2 penalties really hurt the Patriots team. Something very uncharacteristic by a Bill Belichick-led team. Remember once it was Christian Barrymore. He got called for encroachment when the Bills were punting the ball. And that turned into a 4th and 2, which the Bills converted and let them eventually score a touchdown. So that right there, just giving points away to Buffalo, a team where they averaged about 5.7 yards per play offensively against the Patriots. And just looking at their 9 offensive possessions, Matt, 7 of them found their way to the end zone. So with the exception of killing the clock at the end of the first half and at the end of the game, the Bills were scoring on every drive.
So I'm just looking at the stats here and of this Buffalo-New England game. And you know what? It's always cool that when you take first place from a team by beating it. And that's exactly what the Bills did.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's more legitimacy to it as well, because you go back a few weeks ago when the last time these teams played, and it was the Bills who had egg on their face, because the Patriots quite literally just ran the ball down the Bills' throats, and the Bills did nothing to stop it. Mac Jones took 3 total passes that entire contest. 2 of them weren't even until the end of the game, and the Bills still weren't able to defeat New England. Here we kind of saw an inverse of that, where they had to rely a bit more on the run game, and it worked. Not as successful as you would like, but still it worked enough as that it was able to really open up that offense.
Well, here's a guy who, when you think about elite quarterbacks in the NFL, he doesn't necessarily make the top of your list, but maybe he should. Josh Allen.
Absolutely. The way he's been performing past couple seasons, absolutely.
First player in NFL history with 100-plus TD passes, 20-plus rushing touchdowns in the first 4 seasons of his career. How you like that?
He's really stepped it up the past couple seasons. And, you can understand why, because of how erratic he was as a rookie. Yeah. Yeah,
but again, even now, even with those numbers, he doesn't necessarily get the headlines the other guys get. But again, maybe he should. But
he's up top 10 in passing yards, touchdowns as well. He has 34 this season, right behind Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford. And he actually won more than Patrick Mahomes. And we know a big part of it is because it's a pass-heavy offense. But he's done a great job as the conductor of that team's offense. As I said, they score a lot with him under center, and he's a big reason why this Bills team is a playoff contender year in, year out.
Well, they now could be a division contender if present trends continue. One achievement, first of all, whenever you think somebody's done it all, there's always some other little thing that they haven't done yet. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did something and Tom Brady was able to put another feather in his hat by beating the Panthers 32-6 today. They clinched the NFC South for the first time since 2007. So Brady just, adds another achievement. He already won a Super Bowl with them, but he didn't win the division. Now he's got a division title with them.
Yeah, it helps to get Antonio Brown back in the lineup. And the big reason for the Buccaneers' struggles was because their key receivers went down. Brown due to injury. Before that, Gronk missed a couple games. Obviously, Chris Goodwin and Mike Evans were both out recently. But yeah, Antonio Brown back. And Brady only had to throw the ball 18 times. 10 of them went Brown's way. He finished with 101 yards. Rushing-wise, they really capitalized off Keyshawn Vaughn having a huge 55-yard touchdown in the first quarter. And yeah, it made Brady's job that much easier, not having to work too hard in the pocket. And defense-wise, always helps to have a great defense like Tampa Bay has this season.
Okay, adding to, first of all, the Jets finally faced a team that was worse than they are.
I'll talk about that for sure. That's a huge win today for the Jets. It's very rare, but honestly, to me, man, today, remember we used to do winners and losers. Jets were definitely double winners today, and the Giants were double losers. Not only just because of the results, but also the results of that Bears-Seahawks game, where now the Jets move up in draft position while the Giants move down.
Well, the Jets had two big scores. One in particular, Zach Wilson from scrimmage, 52-yard rushing touchdown, longest by a quarterback in Jet history. So he's got another little record to add. But it was, like we said, it was an entertaining game end to end if you were a Jet fan.
Seriously, where else, Matt, do you see a 102-yard kickoff return?
Yeah.
Along with, as you said, the longest touchdown run in Jets history. It's actually
by
the longest
quarterback.
Exactly, by quarterback, yeah. It's the longest rushing touchdown, too, in the NFL going back, I think, to 2018.
I mean, it was a game where they played a team worse than they are, and they did everything right, didn't shoot themselves in the foot, and every aspect of the game was able to help. And
you gotta respect,
special teams, as you said, with the 102-yard rushing return.
Burials.
And Mike Vaccaro did mention in the column that's going to be in tomorrow's New York Post that finally Jet fans get what they were hoping for when Moore threw for 400 yards a few weeks back. They didn't think they were going to necessarily make the playoffs, but at the very least they're going to be competitive and the games are going to be entertaining. They were not. But this is what they were expecting a few weeks ago, and they finally got it. They improved to 4-11. No, they're not going anywhere. But the other thing that's interesting too is that, it kind of the big thing about your interaction with your fans is important, and I have always been a firm believer in always trying to give them hope. Because if you lose that, you lose them. Because if they think the franchise is going nowhere, they're not going to buy tickets. They're not going to buy merchandise. They're not going to give you any money.
That's what the Giants right now.
Exactly what's going on with the Giants right now. So if you've been waiting for season tickets, you're moving up, and Will wants them. But here's and the Giant fans have historically been among the most loyal in sports, let alone the NFL. I mean, like I said, 18 years, my brother born in 63 and didn't see a playoff game until he graduated high school. Okay. So,
we're on that route again.
We are on that route again. And it is.
We're at 5.
And not only are they falling short, they're just not looking good at all.
No.
And they're not giving you any hope. The Jets are starting to give people hope.
That's the crazy thing. Because look at this Jets team, too. This Jets team today, man, in particular, they had 20 guys missing because of COVID issues.
Right.
Their 5 starters defensively were missing. This Jets team were dead to rights. And honestly, too...
Their coach was out.
Exactly. Robert Saleh was out. And Ron Middleton came in and did a heck of a job as a head coach. He had no fear. There was no conservative play going on with him. He went with it on 4th down 5 times, including 3 times in the end zone. But it was enough to get the job done, man. He had a heck of a coaching day.
He's in a situation where he's got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Okay, he's doing somebody else's job. He's going to go back to his normal job as soon as he's done with it. And he's saying, and not only that, literally nothing to lose because they're not playing for anything. They're playing out the string, and tanking sucks. Nobody likes to tank. And, put on a show, and they did. And made the fans feel good about themselves for 1 week at least. And you people, especially in football where you play only once a week, that is huge.
It is.
When look at the Patriot fans, okay? They're still tied for first place, at least in terms of overall record, even though
East, yeah.
Yeah. But how are they feeling? The Jet fans are actually probably feeling better than the Patriot fans this week. Patriot fans are fearing for their lives. They think, we're in trouble.
They think the sky's falling. Meanwhile, their worst season in the last 20 years was last year, where they win, what was it? They went 7-7? No, they went 8-8, right?
Yeah. But people write that season off because of COVID and all the other crazy things.
Exactly.
This season, ironically enough, was probably more affected by COVID than last, but still.
Oh, yeah.
But at least fans were able to go into the stadium and watch the games. But if you are, it's like being a Yankee fan versus being a Met fan. Okay,
right.
The Met fans are thinking we got nothing to lose, and the Yankee fans are saying, we may not make the playoffs, and how tragic that's going to be, or being knocked out in the first round, or the wild card game against the Red Sox, and the pressure when you're a fan of a good team, the pressure's always there. And when you're a fan of a bad team, everything they do that's good is gravy. And it's almost like the Cub fans' attitude. And especially the Cub fans. The Red Sox fans the Red Sox have always been good, but would fall short. The Cubs for many, many years weren't even close to contention. So
and it literally took them over 100 years for them to get around.
You went to Wrigley Field. You didn't care who won. You were there for the experience. And, you just hang out, in the sunshine. Whether the Cubs did anything, well, hey, again, if you got a W, it was, the W flag flying, it was a bonus.
Right.
But
and it's big, too, when next week they have Tampa Bay and they wrap up with a game against Buffalo. So you're hosting Tom Brady, and then you're traveling to face Josh Allen. You almost write that off as 2 wins. You almost write that off as 2 losses. But, they get the win, and on top of that, too, they moved up draft spot. They're picking 4th and 7th in the NFL draft. So, as he said, it's a great day to be a Jets fan, which they don't get too many. They haven't gotten too many over the last decade plus.
Of course, the beef will continue. Who's going to make those picks? You want this front office to be determining the future for this franchise.
I was going to say, we're talking about front offices. We can't talk about that, especially supporting the Giants, because this front office has done a number on this team. Offense primarily. Just transitioning to that Philly Giants game. 34-10 Philadelphia. The score was never really going to be in doubt, even after it was a 3-3 game entering locker room, I believe. 3-3 or 3-6, or 9-3, but this offense was terrible. We were clamoring for Jake Fromm. He comes in, goes 6-17, throws a pick, and he gets replaced for Mike Glennon, who did better just because you really can't get much worse than that.
Right.
Good gosh, that offense may be amongst the worst I've ever seen in my life. Just looking at any team. This is including winless teams like the 0-16 Browns, which Freddie Kitchens was on as a coach, mind you, who's the current offensive coordinator, just to remind everyone. Teams like that 2008 Lions squad. I honestly think that Lions squad could have been the Giants team that was on the field today. Like, they were that bad.
Well, I'll tell you this. Then, again, you're talking about, losing games is a general rule, but losing games within your division is always much worse, especially the one of the oldest divisions where you have some of the oldest franchises in the NFL. And the Philadelphia Eagles have won 13 of their last 16 games against the Giants, and that is just a perfect example of the Giants' malaise, that he can't even buy a win against the Eagles. Now, the Eagles have been good through a lot of that stretch. They did win a Super Bowl and all the other wonderful stuff. But the fact still is that you're expected to step up against your division rivals, and your division rivals are having your lunch. And
this team's totaled 192 yards. 87 of that was in garbage time. And honestly, just looking back at the stats, this team hasn't had a non-garbage time touchdown since quarter one of that Chargers game 3 weeks ago, where it was a 8-yard pass from Glennon to Elijah Penny, the fullback. I genuinely can't remember the last time, a receiver on this team caught, like a genuine, like a touchdown that actually meant something, that actually, kept the Giants in this game. Because I don't even think in the game against the Eagles, receiver caught a touchdown. Like this team has nothing going for it, especially on offense.
Well, and, this is what it was like. I mean, at least leading up to the arrival of Lawrence Taylor, okay, we're talking about, 1981 or so. And a couple of years before that, 78, 79, 80, the Giants had a good defense. I mean, like I said, they had Harry Carson, George Martin. They were building a really good defense. So a game like this would probably be a 17-10 loss instead of a 34-10 loss. But the problem is, as Warner Wolf called it, when he was the WCBS sports anchor, he called the Giants' offense the prevent offense. And everybody knows about the fumble of Joe Pisarcik, which basically was the quintessential play that exemplified it. But the offense was bad end to end, and the offense would always let the team down. That the most prolific scorer on the team was the kicker. Joe Danello was the kicker at the time. So he called it the prevent offense. That always stuck in the back of my head. The other nickname for a bad offense was Nick Capozzi, who was a longtime WUSB staffer and also did sports with us. He used to call the Stony Brook offense back in the Sam Kornhauser era, who was a big defensive-oriented coach, the run and punt. And both of them, the prevent offense and the run and punt. That's
run
Giants
and punt perfectly encapsulates Giants right now, man. It's disgusting how bad this team is. I know COVID injury play a factor, but even when this team was healthy, which they were never truly 100% healthy, which is another major red flag, this team wasn't good. The fact that, the ownership can look at this and think it's okay. Joe Judge is likely coming back next season. They already renewed Jones, his rookie contract. He's coming back next season, most likely. Gettleman is gone because of his own volition. He's likely going to retire. Rather than get fired, like a lot of these people, these personnel probably should.
If you had time left on your contract, you want them to fire you.
Yeah,
because then you get paid.
I was gonna say after this, I don't know why do you want to keep anyone.
Now, if your contract's up, that's different. But
right,
if you have time left on your contract, please fire me.
The current front runner again, replace him is Kevin Abrams. So you're sticking in house, and you think that's gonna make this offense better. Oh man. It is going to be a tough another 5+ years for this Giants squad. And it's incredible, too, where this is at the same time where you have the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, here's a stat on the TV, Matt. Second player in NFL history to throw a touchdown pass to a receiver, a tight end, a running back, and a lineman in one game after Kurt Warner in the 99 playoffs.
Hey, Kurt Warner, there's a movie about him that's out right now.
That's coming out, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And hey, Kurt Warner was a Giant for a little while too, back when they were still.
Right.
Still
he honestly, no doubt in my mind that he is a better quarterback right now. Like he could outplay Jake Fromm and Mike Glennon.
How old is he now? 40, late 40s, early 50s?
Early 50s for sure. No doubt in my mind he can outplay them.
He's exactly 50. He just turned 50 this year.
I have never seen a football team as bad as this, or just focus on offense as bad as this, and this is including winless offenses. You look at the records. I know the Texans are technically worse. I think the Jets are tied with the Giants. I know Jacksonville is technically worse. No, the Giants are the worst team in football for sure, and a lot of it is just solely because of the offense.
Oh,
At
by
least
the
in the Texans
way,
and Jacksonville case, they can score touchdowns. Giants
I
can't even do that.
I just Googled Kurt Warner, right? And they found out he was 50 years old. And you know how they always throw up, like, people also search for? Okay, Brenda Warner, who's his wife, Ben Roethlisberger, Larry Fitzgerald, and Tony Romo. Where did those come from?
Wow. Those are people I think on chopping. Oh, those are probably 3 good candidates to replace the Giants quarterback.
Yeah.
Right now, I'd put Larry Fitzgerald under the center as opposed to Jake Fromm or Mike Lennon in a heartbeat.
Get a load of this. We have a caller. Let me just get everything set up here so we can get them on real quick. Okay. And we're going to get you on live here. And, okay. Yeah, here we go. Gotcha.
How are you?
Okay. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Jay from Centereach.
Okay, Jay from Centereach. Go right ahead. Ken, you're still there?
Guess not. Guess it's just
No,
you,
Ken can hear me. So, Ken,
okay.
I will.
I turn my radio off.
But yeah, turn your radio off, and then I will turn my mic off when you're talking. Go right ahead.
So I think you were talking before about the how the Jets and Giants games used to be on at different times, and frankly they've been so bad lately. I don't mind them being on at the same time because it's hard to watch that much bad football in one day. Today the Giants game was over. I'm more of a Giant fan, but I did put the Jet game on for a little while after because the Giant game got out of hand quickly, and it was a close game. I mean, neither team played well, but they were evenly matched. It was an even game, came right down to the end. So until they get better, I don't mind them being on at the same time. Frankly, I'll just put that out there.
Your name again? Sorry, I just want to make sure I get it right.
Jay.
Jay. Okay, Jay. Well, I can't disagree with you there, mainly because, yeah, you want to limit your torture, but I grew up like everybody else did, watching both teams on Sunday and, not being overly concerned with what was going on elsewhere in the league. You'd follow during halftime, you'd follow during the breaks, and you didn't always have, one team might be good, one team might be not so good, but you still followed them both. And, you were still, more involved. And I still, it doesn't feel right to me that I have to choose. And even when both teams are bad, when they're good, I'm going to be really angry, that I have to choose. I want to watch both.
Mm-hmm. Well, something tells me this problem will work itself out when they get good. I just have that feeling. They're getting a little more looser with the rules on TV. I don't know, rules may not be the right word, but the way they broadcast the games, because it used to be always, the visiting team had whichever network had the visiting team. That network got the rights. NFC goes to Fox, AFC goes to CBS, and they've kind of mixed that up a little bit more lately too. So it's kind of they're trying to get more games on in the or better games on. Even today they had the main game in the 4:00 was the Kansas City game, and that when that got out of hand, they switched to the end of the Las Vegas Denver game, even though it was over by the time they got there. But we watched 3 kneel downs basically, and then we went back to Kansas City. So I think most people just enjoy watching a good game, whatever. And in terms of the Giants, I think it was Tom Coughlin, who's, I don't know what, the current GM's contract status is, but I remember when Tom Coughlin's contract was up and they decided not to bring him back, or they kind of worked it out that I think Tom announced he was going to retire. And Tom had a good quote. He said, "Well, if they're going to run you out of town, you ought to at least lead the parade." So, so Tom realized, hey, I'm going to leave in my own volition, and and then he wound up going to Tampa for a few years.
Well, it kind of reminds me of. Remember Don Zimmer when he was bench coach under Joe Torre, and he finally said he'd had enough. Now, he wound up in Tampa Bay for a few years as well. But the thing with Coughlin is that he was able, you know what it kind of reminds me of? You're familiar with The Godfather?
Sure.
Frankie Pentangeli.
Him, I don't remember. So
Frankie Five Angels. Godfather Part 2. Okay? He turned state's evidence to the feds, and Tom Hagen comes in and says, well, you can go out this way, you can go out that way. You go out that way, it looks a little better, kind of thing. It goes back, he talks about ancient Rome and things like that. It's like, going out on your own terms, I think, is a good way to describe what Coughlin was able to do, but he was going out no matter what. If he had resisted, they would just said, you're out of here, and then fire you outright. This way, he was able to at least control the narrative, I guess. But in this case,
the same thing too.
Everybody's going to know when the change is made, why the change is being made. Now, Coughlin has 2 Super Bowl wins to his credit, but that's never good enough. I mean, it's always, what have you done for me lately?
Sure.
And the malaise started under him. And you got to, But the only problem is the changes they made didn't fix it.
Well, it's basically the same process, almost the same people doing the drafting. That's the whole thing. And so this goes back, if you go back to when Gettleman came, he kind of told them what they wanted to hear, that Eli still had something left. And Eli probably did. But it was nobody could block. They haven't been able to block for almost, 8 years now or something. So Eli, so obviously they, so they told, and Eli probably did have something left, but no one could protect him. Jones has suffered the same problem. Glennon last week, from today, they just can't block, and you can't do anything if you can't block in football. The problem with Gettleman is he said his reputation was based on being able to watch film and find people who could block. He talked about hog mollies and all that stuff, and it just hasn't panned out.
Yeah,
so,
it is so tough, and I agree. It is so tough to watch, and that's honestly been one of their biggest flaws. We talked about too. You remember, Jay? Before the start of the season, we're talking about how on paper, you look at guys like, hey, if Daniel Jones emerges as good quarterback, you'll have Saquon Barkley in the backfield. You'll have Galladay to turn to. You'll have Darius Slayton, Shepard, Ingram, etc. But even from before the season started, we were looking at that offensive line they really didn't make too many changes there, and not many that necessarily qualify as good changes from last season. And it really, from game one, that red flag has only gotten bigger and bigger, ultimately to where we're at now, to where you saw today, Matt Pert was getting smoked by Josh Sweat at the start of the game, and ultimately he ended up getting hurt, and he's probably done for the season too, after delivering a really lackluster performance. And to me, we were talking about Coughlin earlier and Eli and guys like that. I agree, they were the best options at the time, but, as Matt said, you're going out one way or another. And I honestly did think that it was going to be time for a change from that old guard of Coughlin, Eli, etc. To me, the problem is that it became the Mara Go Boys Club, where it becomes all his friends and essentially, all his people, manning those top spots in top positions in the personnel. And, that's the direction that this team has turned to, where it becomes a lot of yes men trying to guide the team, as opposed to those, knowledgeable folks like Coughlin who are going to be able to debate and maybe, change the mind of ownership, of, football personnel. You're not getting that now with the guys there now, like Gettleman, like Abrams, who's probably going to follow him, because it's going to be a bunch of yes men. And it's not going to end up very well, as we've seen with other teams in that scenario, like the Jaguars, like Texans under Bob, and even now, under McNair, their new ownership. It is not looking good if the Giants stay, on the same pace, to where, they got, as I said, a lot of these yes men, a lot of these guys who really have no business being in the position that they're at, but they're there because of who they know, and it becomes something to where they don't look at the issues that you and I see, and Matt as well. We saw last year, and I'm sure you were thinking, all right, you got two a top draft. Well, you have a high draft pick now. Probably going to get a lineman there, or an edge rusher, and they end up using it on a receiver, and that hasn't really worked out too well. For as good as Tony is, he's missed a lot of time, and even today, wasn't really pouring much, but no one was on that team. They just don't see the same issues because they can't stomach that they made mistakes, that what they're doing is wrong. They look at this and think that is other people's fault.
Well, that was the other part of it. I mean, receiver was probably their deepest position, so why they got another one, I'm not sure, but, that's over and done with. And then and then even last year, and this goes back to the spring after the draft, and they were talking about how they didn't draft any linemen, they didn't sign any in free agency, and then, whatever the official party line was, we like what we got, and then, you find out at the end of training camp they're scouting the other team's cuts because they're, after 3 exhibition games, they knew they were in a deep hole, and they were scouting, who did the other team cut that might be better than what we got, and and they even brought a couple of people in who weren't any better than what they have. So so it's kind of a lost season. One thing that said, I think I think now with the advent of the fantasy sports, we do kind of have more interest in some other players on other teams and stuff. So it's we still root for the teams we root for, but we're maybe more than just checking in on things once in a while, I guess, some of the other games. So
it does bother me as a traditionalist, I guess, but the thing that bothers me the most is that nobody seems to care outside of New York what New York does anymore. Again, I mentioned this, Ken, on previous shows, that I'm going to actually put up on social media. I want to get people's response from people in the industry. Does the NFL really need New York anymore? I mean, they survive without LA, as we said, for a while. And does, as big as a media market as New York is, does that matter anymore? Because, LeBron James was able to be LeBron James in Cleveland. And then Miami. Miami is a fairly big media market, but it's not New York, it's not L.A. Later on goes to L.A., but, I mean, the Seattle Supersonics downgrade their media market by going to Oklahoma City, and doesn't seem to matter. So, how much does this matter anymore? And, therefore, how much does this determine, first of all, what team and player chooses? The money is going to be the same because the NBA has their ceilings, and even in Major League Baseball, you're only talking about a few $1 million difference in overall contracts. How does a player choose where to play now? Do they do it based on how good the team is, how good the franchise is, what the schools are like, for the kids? I mean. What kind of is it? Just like choosing a job or where you're going to work as a regular person, versus I'm going to play for the Cowboys, I'm going to play for the Patriots, I'm going to play for the Giants. Yeah. Does the prestige mean anything anymore? And I'd love to ask a bunch of guys and just basically maybe spend the rest of this winter season asking guys about this. How much does it matter? I mean, they're going to give me the usual, I love being an Islander, I love being this, I love doing that, because that's what they have, that's the public persona they have to portray. But personally, when it comes to being a free agent or wondering where you're going to get drafted, does it really matter that much?
I think it probably doesn't matter as much now, and especially for the sports career, because like I said, you can make the money anywhere, and in some cases, you mentioned Oklahoma City, you can be the big fish in a small pond, and do just fine. Not everyone, what Sinatra had always said about New York: if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. That's probably true, but not everybody can make it here. It's much more crowded. So, and so, but I mean, I'm thinking of Bart Oates when he was on the radio. He used to say one of the reasons he came to New York was he wanted to get into broadcasting when his career was over, and he was able to do that. And first on FAN, now he's on ESPN, and so sometimes it's the ancillary things that make the difference. Because I think you're right that you can, make pretty much the same salary as a player in most places. And sometimes it's the ability. Sometimes it's just the opportunity to play too. If you're a wide receiver, you don't come to a team that's got three, wide receivers ahead of you, really, and you see that. Like I saw that actually a lot with the Stony Brook basketball team, where because of especially the transfer rules are a lot more liberal now. But I guess it was 2 years ago when just about the whole team left. Some guys had, some guys were looking for a bigger pond. Some guys were getting squeezed out of playing time, so they had to go to other schools to play. I don't have to get into names here, but I think that's it's the opportunity to play really is what most of the athletes really want, and obviously, and the proposed to get paid well too. But like you said, the money's probably, if you're worth a certain amount of money, you can get that from most of the teams. So a lot of times it's just where you fit in.
What I'll say about it is that, yes, that's really, those are considerations. I remember Randy Johnson saying when he joined the Diamondbacks, when he left Seattle to join the Diamondbacks. And the Diamondbacks, while they were definitely a team on the move, were not necessarily considered a top contender yet. He said, hey, guys, I didn't come here because they gave me the best contract. I came here because they gave me the best chance to win. And I remember him saying that after he had pitched against the Mets, in the visiting clubhouse. And it didn't really surprise too many people, only that it may have surprised people that you go to an expansion team to win. But that's where he felt that the franchise was going in the right direction and was going to be competitive quickly, particularly after they added him to it. Yes, and that's important too. That of course, everybody loves Arizona because of the weather and stuff like that. But people were wondering, I think at the time when he left Seattle, he said, "Why didn't you go to Boston or New York or someplace like that?" No, he went to Arizona, and Arizona wasn't Arizona yet. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, agreed. No, it goes both ways for both New York teams. It goes that way. It's tough to convince a lot of these good players to come to New York. In terms of football, unlike other sports, just because even for the Giants, you remember the Super Bowl, they won 2. Over the past 20 years. The problem is that was 10 years ago, and in football especially, things move on so fast. Look at these rosters for both New York squads, and there's no winners. And what I mean by that is just how much talent is there that have even sniffed the playoffs. Look at there's a stat right here from the Giants. There's 24 players on the current roster, about half their team, where they played for the Giants and only the Giants. Only Sterling Shepard has played on a team that's not only made the playoffs, but that's even been above 500 during the regular season. There's just no winners here, and it's hard to convince, players and top free agents like we've seen over the past couple seasons to come to New York when it really, there's a lot of inconsistency, and B, there's really no plan, at least look at the Giants now, that things are really going to change. If you're keeping pretty much virtually the same personnel, like we're seeing them do with Daniel Jones, Joe Judge, Gettleman's gone, but he's going to replace by a guy who's pretty similar to him. Ownership's not changing. That's not going to change many people's minds, many top players' minds in terms of, coming to New York and, having an impact on their compared to other teams, especially when you look at players who left New York and are starting to make an impact. Odell Beckham being a prime one, where although he didn't play great in Cleveland, he's starting to have that resurgence on a pretty loaded Rams offense. He has, I think, 4 touchdowns now in his last 5 games. And, look at other players like that to where they're leaving New York and they're, really stepping up. And again, it's just tough to do on a squad where there really doesn't feel like there's that anticipation that this is a playoff team. We hoped at the start of the season, there's possibilities, but just how they played, even from week 1 against Denver, you could tell there are some obvious problems that are just not being, resolved or not being touched on by a pretty stingy front office. At least in the Jets case, they did try that. Where they changed everything. Had huge overturns, and it hasn't been working yet. But after today, maybe they could build upon it and look forward for a couple of years to where maybe there's something to build on. Especially if Zach Wilson performs today like how he did against other teams. There's just that thing where there's nothing to build on with this Giants squad because, frankly, they just suck week in and week out. Even their wins. Remember when they beat the Eagles a few weeks ago? That game sucked too. That was a 13-7 win.
You know what? You're right, except that the talent level has a lot to do with it because if you're building a team, yeah, you're going to be bring draftees in who will have had no other exposure to the NFL than your team. But if they're talented enough, they will raise the level of play for that team. And then you add individual pieces here and there. You add a Brady and a Gronkowski to a Buccaneer team, and you win a Super Bowl. But your base, your core is there, and you put that together earlier. But this Giant team has not had that talent level because they made bad draft picks, and so it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that the team isn't going to be any good. Yeah, but hey, Eli Manning never played for any other team either.
Yeah, for the Giants too, I'm sure Jay will agree. I'm really focusing on the early rounds. They take dumb draft picks in the sense that they took a guy like Daniel Jones pretty early, really earlier than he should have been drafted. I think he was, 8th overall? He really was a more mid-tier guy. This year, for example, remember they drafted Kadarius Toney in the first round. I understand Jacksonville was looking at him, but at the same time, he was going to do anything in Jacksonville because no one does anything in Jacksonville, as we saw today. And he really, again, wasn't – the Giants getting to the offseason – adding another wide receiver really wasn't a priority, especially when you had Kenny Golladay coming in too, who is one of those aforementioned veterans who could have changed the team and their identity and how they looked. He hasn't. He's gone down with the rest of the ship, but still, at the time we didn't know that. And even with Saquon Barkley, where the Giants really could use the quarterback or another position player there, but they went with. I understand, they went with the best guy on the draft board. But outside of his rookie season, he's done nothing of value, and I don't even know what his trade value could be if they choose to trade him. And it's sad that we come to a point where it's like, should we trade this 23, 24, young, running back who will likely go off on another team and perform well because we've been seeing it. It sucks right now.
You know what?
It doesn't look like it's getting better, Matt.
Saquon Barkley. Go ahead.
I don't say Barkley was drafted the year all the quarterbacks came out. All the good quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and like Josh Allen and maybe not Sam Darnold, but I think there was another one too that year. I mean, it's just names escape me now, but that was the year, and they went with and running backs are, injuries are injuries, but Barkley's starting to remind me of another Penn State guy, Blair Thomas, who was also drafted much higher than he should have been, and had a mediocre career. So
did nothing. But you know what? Picture this, guys: Saquon Barkley on your fantasy team. Okay,
picture it. I have it.
Yeah. Okay.
Done nothing.
Yeah. Well, how many offers have you had for him?
None.
Thank you. So there you go.
And,
his value.
And on some of them, they show you the statistics, for how many people try to add him. He has more drops than add virtually every week. And the crazy thing to me is that on the site I use, he's actually, they usually try to advertise him as a great secondary running back option. And I look at that and I laugh. And I have him stored on the bench for most weeks because I know he's behind an offensive line that's not going to protect him. And with the injuries he's had and that loss of explosiveness, from his rookie season, I know he's not producing more than, he produced 32 yards this week on 15 carries. He averaged 2 yards per carry. It's not going to get done in Yahoo Fantasy, ESPN Fantasy. Definitely not going to get done in the real world, and that's really, I think that's a great showing of this Giants offense. You take a guy who on paper could be great, and he was reduced to virtually nothing.
The other poor showing about the Giants' offense was the passing yards. I didn't see what happened when Glennon came in, but the average whatever. I mean, and actually, Fromm's passing statistics looked about like that too. He was 5 of whatever for 20 yards or something. It was, I mean, I don't think there were almost no passes, like past the first down marker at all in the whole game. It was, the only passes they completed were dinks.
Well, you know what's going to happen. Well, first of all, that's the thing, too. You have knowledgeable fans, especially in New York. And if the guy's just throwing dinks, everybody knows what the coverage is like and, well, what you have to do to stop that. And if the guy can't go long, guess what? You have no passing game. But we all know what the pattern is because we've been watching bad football for so long. But thank you so much, Jay. Please continue to listen and keep calling.
Okay, glad you're taking calls again.
Yes, and we are too. I mean, it's a lot of fun.